Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Justice Now. I am Rosina Snow. I'm the Director of Communications at Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. I am joined today by Kajsa Foskey, and I will give a fuller introduction in a moment. But before we start, I'd like to do a brief land acknowledgement. We want to remind ourselves that we gather on the unceded land of the indigenous peoples. I am currently in Richmond, which is on the land of the Powhatan and Chickahominy peoples. And if you are unsure whose land you are on and want to find out, you can visit nativeland.ca to find out, and I'll put that down here. So the last few episodes have been focused on our Healthy Communities and Comprehensive Planning Bill, since the General Assembly is underway, well underway at the moment. And that bill has now been passed in both the House of Delegates and the Senate before crossover, when those versions will cross over to the other chamber and then be taken up again. So we're very happy about that. We're very happy for the support we've gotten from our community. Hundreds of people have taken action alerts to advocate for these bills with their legislators, and we are really pleased that has resulted in strong bipartisan support and just strong support across the board. And today, though, we're going to talk about our other bill, which is currently making its way through the legislature as well. And that bill is our Utilities Disconnection Bill, or Protecting Virginians from Utility Disconnections or Shutoffs. And that brings me to our guest, Kajsa. Kajsa Foskey is an economic justice outreach coordinator at the Virginia Poverty Law Center, working specifically on utility fairness and affordable clean energy access. So that's right up our alley. In her role, she also runs VPLC's Utility Helpline, working to assist Virginians struggling to afford their utilities or at risk of being disconnected from their utility service. Welcome, Kajsa. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. So glad to be here.
Yeah. So could you give us an overview of your work at Virginia Poverty Law Center? We were chatting a bit before, and this is not the same as the Southern Poverty Law Center, which people have probably also heard of. But if you could just introduce what you do with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, that would be great.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I work as an economic justice outreach coordinator, working specifically on utilities. And so, what a lot of my work consists of is going around the state and planning events related to energy affordability, spreading awareness about energy access, letting people know what it means to be in Virginia's utility service system. And as you mentioned, I run our utility helpline. So I try to help folks navigate issues or disputes they might have with their utility and just kind of give tips on how to advocate for yourself if you do find yourself in a position where you need to file a complaint or have a dispute with your utility or are struggling to keep up, where to find resources for assistance. So I do a broad range of things, but this time of year, specifically working on the legislative session, trying to get the shutoffs bills through the process.
Yeah, awesome. Do you get a lot of calls through that hotline? Do you feel like awareness of the hotline is spreading?
A bit. I always try to provide the disclaimer when I give out the helpline number that the helpline is me. So when folks call, they're usually talking to me. And there is a real need for utility assistance. 211, which is the state run helpline system, is they've consistently said in the past year the top unmet need is utility assistance. They get so many calls about utility assistance. And there really is a gap. And so I think that we kind of entered this space hoping to fill a little bit of that gap and just really try to learn about what the common issues are that people are experiencing with their utilities, how they're struggling to afford them, the decisions they're having to make. And we kind of use that to kind of inform what regulatory or policy changes that need to happen in order to protect ratepayers and keep people connected to an essential service that they need to stay safe and healthy in their homes.
Mm-hmm. So what is the current sort of status quo or law in Virginia, and what effect is that having on people?
Yeah, so in Virginia, it's really about the lack of law or status quo, I
Mhm.
think, is the case here. So Virginia is only one of 7 states without any type of shutoff protections during extreme weather events. Um, that means that there are like no laws preventing utilities, your gas, water, electric utilities from shutting you off on the hottest or coldest days of the year.
Mhm.
Right now, the really only procedure that we have in Virginia related to utility shutoffs is for folks with serious medical conditions. They can get up to 2 delays of termination of their service if they have a condition that requires, the need of service. But it's 2 delays. They're not very long, and specific and kind of most folks don't even know that those protections exist. And so, um, we're trying to make efforts to really kind of beef up our laws related to shut off protections in high risk periods when it's too hot, when it's too cold,
Mhm.
times where folks are would have difficulty getting quickly reconnected, weekends, holidays, business days,
Mhm.
non-business days, excuse me. So um, there's not a whole lot out there in terms of the protection landscape, and so we're trying to make some changes with that this year.
Mhm. Is it mostly Dominion that sort of provides utilities, or is it other companies as well?
Yeah, so in Virginia, we do have a monopoly utility system. And so the investor owned utilities, which are Dominion, Appalachian Power, they cover most of the Virginia state. So they cover, I
Mhm.
think, about 2/3 of the territory. But the
Mhm.
rest, there are electric co ops, there are municipal, like your locality run
Mhm.
utilities, and then the water and the gas companies, though, there's a bunch across the state too. And so, uh, across the board, there aren't really any protections. Some of
Mhm.
these companies already have kind of implemented some of their like some of the protections into their practices, but there's really no standard uniform law across the board for all utility providers, regardless of your zip code, right? Because your zip
Mhm.
code pretty much determines which utility serves you. And
Right.
so the goal here is to really establish like a baseline protection for the entire state, not just Dominion customers, not just electric cooperative customers, but for customers of all utilities of all types, both jurisdictional and non-jurisdictional,
Mhm.
which means that the State Corporation Commission regulates the jurisdictional utilities. So those are your companies like Dominion, Appalachian Power, some of the electric cooperatives, but a lot of the municipal utilities, so like Richmond DPU, for example, Richmond Department of Public Utilities, is not regulated by the State Corporation Commission. So sometimes the rules can be kind of different for the jurisdictional versus the non-jurisdictional. And
Mhm.
so it's been our belief that the rules should be the same across the board for everyone,
Mhm.
right? Like every Virginian, regardless of their zip code, deserves access to the same baseline protections.
Mhm. And there isn't protection, well, since it's lacking, there's no protections around um, times when it would be unsafe to have utilities shut off. So I know a couple weeks ago, there was a polar vortex incursion a little bit. It got really, really cold, bitterly cold.
Yeah.
And, you know, people need to be protected when there's extreme weather like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the extreme weather we've been experiencing highlights the urgent need for these type of protections, right? We
Mhm.
had that really cold snap last week. Summer 2023 was the hottest summer on record, right? There was
Mhm.
heat waves across the country. There was multiple 90 plus degree days. And so when especially our most vulnerable Virginians, folks with serious medical conditions, folks who maybe are older, infants, people with disabilities, they are really at risk during these extreme weather conditions. And there's nothing really on the record stopping utilities from shutting people off on those really hot days or those really cold days. And we know that that's extremely unsafe, right? Extreme heat can be very dangerous. You can have heat strokes, you can have long lasting effects, lifelong effects to your health. Um, and it's really hard to kind of understand the scope of the problem for disconnections because the utilities aren't required to report any data about disconnections. So we don't exactly know when and how frequently they're shutting people off. We don't know if they're shutting people off on the hottest or the coldest days of the year. They're not required to really make any of that data available.
Mhm.
Some utilities do voluntarily give data to the State Corporation Commission, which is very limited data. But from that data, we know that in 2022, there were over 300,000 shutoffs.
Wow.
20 Over 20,000 of those shutoffs happened in December, and over 25,000 of those shutoffs happened in July. Those are the coldest and hottest months of the year, and those are only for the jurisdictional utilities. Like, right, there's a whole other set of utilities where we have no idea what goes on, and so it's really kind of hard to understand the magnitude and the scope of the problem without access to that data. And that's what we need, because then that tells us who is at most at risk, right? Who is being shut off? What days are they being shut off on? For what reason? Are they being, in extreme weather events? Are people being put in unsafe positions? And so it's really hard to kind of know how many people have been impacted by shutoffs like this, especially during extreme weather events.
Mhm. Yeah, wow, that data is really startling. And I think that that paints a clearer picture for folks who might not know much about this.
Yeah.
And it also, I think, strengthens the argument that having some protections is likely to save lives, frankly, but also just to give people more dignity and control over their basic needs.
Right.
So why don't we talk a bit about the bill? Um, it did get, it came up for, I believe, a full House vote. Or maybe, yeah, I think it came up for a full House vote this week and did pass. And then it's working its way through the Senate currently. And we've been sending action alerts for those who get our newsletter. We send it out uh, according to if their senator is voting on something or not, or their delegate is voting on something or not. So anyway, I wonder if you could share a bit about this bill and how it's going to address this issue.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, the House version of the bill, which is HB 906, Delegate Irene Shin in Fairfax is carrying the bill. She's brought this issue multiple years now. This is the third time that we've tried to get it done, but it's been making its way through the process. It passed on the House floor 76-24. And the legislation, there's also a Senate bill, SB 480 by Senator LaSharice Aird. And those bills essentially codify recommendations that came from the State Corporation Commission about formalizing a policy for shutoff protections during high risk periods. So the State Corporation Commission essentially made a list of recommendations and said we should make these standard for all the utilities. Like these should be the baseline protections. And what those protections essentially are, basically establish limitations on shutoffs during extreme hot and cold weather periods. So they can't shut you off if it's at or below 32 degrees or at or above 92 degrees. They can't shut you off during times where it would be difficult to get quickly reconnected. So Fridays, weekends, holidays, non-business days generally. They can't shut you off when there's a communicable public health disease, right? Something like COVID, where you need to wash your hands and stay in your home and stay put to keep you safe and healthy, right? So this legislation codifies a lot of those recommendations. The original bill also made some requests for data so that we can better understand the shutoffs issue. Obviously, some of those things get lost in translation along the way, but the baseline protections are still in the bill, and hopefully if it makes it through the Senate, it'll be headed to the governor's desk.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very exciting, and it is encouraging. It does seem like this is a sort of common sense, um, law to be passed, and
Yeah.
people of all different ideologies and so forth can see that it's doesn't seem like it's really a partisan issue, which is why you see the bipartisan support that it's getting.
Yeah, it's been getting bipartisan support. And, this has been an effort, like I said, long in the making. This is the third year we've tried to bring it back. The first year resulted in the study, which are the recommendations that I discussed. Last year, unfortunately, didn't make it through the process. But this year, we're having a bit more success. And so I'm hopeful that soon enough, this will be on the governor's desk, hopefully to sign and get passed into law. So we have these protections as of July 1st.
Excellent. Would you mind talking a little bit about your work with affordable clean energy and how this relates to this initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of Virginia Property Law Center's work on uh, affordable clean energy access has mostly been related to really trying to protect the ratepayers. Energy efficiency is the least cost form of energy. It basically, energy efficiency reduces the amount of energy that you have to use to continue living your normal kind of life and not having to. It's different than energy conservation, right? Energy conservation is when you're turning off the lights and you're trying to conserve energy by not using too much water, and maybe you're keeping your house a little bit colder than you would normally like, or you're keeping it a little bit warmer than you would normally like in an attempt to save energy and maybe reduce your bill. Energy efficiency is really about using less energy, but still maintaining that same level of comfort. And so we have found that a lot of low income folks in particular are paying more for their energy than any other income group, right? Like a lot of low income households, households that are, and have an income of $10,000 or less annually are spending $1.31 per square foot for energy compared to households who make $40,000 spending $1.03 per square foot, right? So, and that's usually because a lot of their homes are not as energy efficient as possible. They're not as weatherized, right? Their homes are not, in the state where they can really hold on and conserve as much energy as possible. And so because of that, a lot of low income people end up paying more for their energy cost. And so we've really seen energy efficiency as a way for uh, low to moderate income folks to still continue living their same healthy, normal lives and level of comfort while also having reduced costs for their energy. And so a lot of our work in the clean energy space has been mostly related to making sure that low income people have the same access to opportunities to participate in clean energy if that will help them lower their cost. So things like, shared solar or rooftop solar, where low income folks, can't necessarily go and buy a solar panel to put on their house when they are usually renters and maybe don't own the property. Solar panels are expensive. So, programs like shared solar, rooftop solar allow people to participate and have access to clean energy and, hopefully have some savings as well. So a lot of our work has mostly been about accessing programs. And so, as I mentioned, I plan events around the state. And so a lot of that work is really spreading awareness about energy efficiency programs. Most people don't know that they can ask their utility to give them an energy audit of their home, where they basically come in and try to assess where folks are losing energy and where, kind of improvements might be able to be made in the home to make it more resilient and secure so that you're not losing as much energy. A lot of people don't know that there are programs like the Weatherization Assistance Program that can you can get your home weatherized, where they do things like improve your insulation and caulk windows and things like that. So we try to spread awareness about these programs and let them know that they exist, because there are lots of opportunities for folks to participate. You just kind of have to know about them and know where to go and know how to find them, which sometimes is the hardest part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that in Charlottesville, there's a group called LEAP that will do an energy audit. And I think that it'll be free for lower income. And then it's not very expensive for a higher income bracket either. And we did that at my house, and it was really helpful. They do a really thorough job. That's a sort of nonprofit entity, I think. But
Yeah.
you said that utilities will do it for you.
Yeah, utilities, the Weatherization Assistance Program is run through the Department of Housing Community Development. So that's like a state-run program. And really in the system that we have, right, where if people can't afford their utilities, their options are either to pay or get shut off. Disconnection should really be the last resort. And folks who don't live in weatherized homes or where their housing is, less energy efficient, that means that they're more at risk of disconnection due to non-payment. Low income households, as I mentioned, spend more money on their energy bill than any other income group. Low income Virginia households, which is like what that are at 30% of the area median income, spend an average of 14% of their income on energy costs, compared to 4% for households that are at 100% of the area median income. And so you see those disparities, and how that play out is folks who have less energy efficient homes consistently find themselves using more energy, spending more for their energy, then find themselves at risk of disconnection, maybe facing disconnection more frequently. Once you get disconnected, you usually have to pay security deposits, reconnection fees, late fees. So the barrier to getting reconnected is even high. So with such high barriers to getting reconnected, disconnection should really be the last resort. And so, as I mentioned, energy assistance is one of the top unmet needs. Utility assistance is one of the top unmet needs in Virginia. And so we've left a lot of people in the dark, unfortunately. And so, we're trying to make efforts to change that. And a part of the long-term strategy is making sure that homes can be more energy efficient, that folks can have access to clean energy programs that will allow them to lower their energy costs. Virginia recently started up its percentage of income payment plan program, where low income households only will have to pay a percentage of their they pay a percentage of their income towards their utility costs. A lot of what they call when you're energy burdened is when you're paying a disproportionate amount of your income to your energy cost. And so that program is designed to try to help, relieve some of that burden and have folks only paying, the percentage of their income that is actually what they're supposed to be paying towards their utility costs, especially for our most, vulnerable Virginians, are the ones that are most at risk of being disconnected frequently and experiencing these problems, because disconnection really should be the last resort when folks have no other options.
So are you saying that that's a policy that's being proposed, or that it has already been?
So it's here only for, as of right now, it's only for Dominion customers. It's like the only territory that it's operating in right now. I think it should be coming to Appalachian Power customers soon, but that was a big push and a win that happened in the legislature, and now the program is starting to roll out. But these are all attempts at long-term sustainable options to help keep people connected to their utility service. And so in the absence of those programs, what we have to try to do is pass bills like these ones, where they establish some shutoff protections and establish really just a baseline to start with, so that folks know what the policies are, right? Like this legislation also asks the utilities to make the policy publicly available, let people know when they can and cannot be disconnected, because so many people don't know that when they sign up for the utility service, they're signing a contract with their utility, and you can have a say, right? Participating in legislation like this is having a say in how your utilities run and how they treat you. Participating in rate cases at the State Corporation Commission is a way to have your voice be heard and to have a say in how your utilities serve you. And so a lot of our work is also trying to just push for that kind of self-advocacy, get more people involved in this space and let them know that you do have a say.
Yeah. I mean, it just sounds like, from all the different ways that the equity issues compound each other, and especially with the energy burden, the way that intersects with poverty, that it becomes an issue that is really making it harder to get out of poverty, or to experience those challenges. So this seems like just a really common sense solution to that will affect so many people. So how can people support this work? How can people support the bill at this point?
Yeah.
And your work generally?
Yeah. So, as far as the legislation, contacting your legislators is always helpful. If you don't know who your legislator is, if you go to Who's My Legislator on the General Assembly website, you can type in your zip code and it'll tell you who your representatives are. These bills, although they're still going, one has passed the House and the other one is making its way through the Senate, they still have to both cross over to each other's chambers. And so there's still lots of opportunities to let your legislators know that you care about these bills, that you care about these issues. Let them know how you're affected by your energy costs. Another great way to make your voice heard is to, uh, you know, participate in public comment periods at the State Corporation Commission. Let them know how your energy bills are affecting you. There have been some rate increases more recently, and I know folks are really starting to feel the impact of that. And so, tell the State Corporation Commission that you're feeling the impact. Let them know how you're struggling. Let them know what your feelings are about your utility service, because it does really matter. More broadly, if you're interested in supporting VPLC's work, visit us, vplc.org. You can read about all of the things that we're doing. We have a newsletter where we're kind of providing legislative updates about the bills that we're supporting in our legislative agenda.
Is that right? VLPC.org?
vplc.org.
VPLC. All right, I'll change it.
Yep.
Let's see.
I'm sorry, I might have missed that.
VP. No, I mean, that's obviously what it would be.
Yeah.
The Virginia Law Poverty Center.
Yeah, VPLC. We have a newsletter, so if you're interested in kind of following our legislative priorities and how the bills that we have are moving through the process, you can definitely tune in. We usually send those out weekly.
Do you send out action alerts for bills?
We do. So when we have bills that are particularly, about to be up for a vote, and maybe we need some more support, we have our social media. On Instagram, we are VA Poverty Law. On X, we are, let me double check the @ sorry, I should know this. We are VPLC it's like we're different on lots of social medias. We have a Facebook page as well.
Yeah.
So we try to post anytime we need kind of the needle to move. We try to let folks know how they can participate and how they can support the bills where we have kind of those action items that we need to get done.
Okay, great. We've been sending out action alerts for the utility bill, and it just sort of has a pre-written message that folks can change and customize if they want. And
when I've been talking with legislators, they've said, oh, constituents in our district have emailed about this. Oh, people in our district really care about this. Oh, I've gotten a ton of emails about these issues. So it really does matter when you send those emails and when you do those action alerts, when you let your legislators know that you care. They are, taking those opinions into consideration. And so I always recommend making your voice heard, especially if it's an issue that you care about, that impacts you, that impacts people you know and care about, your neighbors. And spread the message far and wide. That's always another thing that's helpful, is letting people know that, hey, somebody's trying to do something about this. And we should all be, singing this from the mountaintops.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there is something of a groundswell already. It's in its third year, but we've been getting hundreds of people contacting, and I'm sure you are too. So I think that's put this in a really strong position. And I would invite anyone else to join, because the more the merrier. And there's a lot of work to be done on this issue, even beyond the bill. So I know that you have a meeting to get to, and I want to thank you for your time. That was a really informative and very quick and efficient conversation. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I know utilities aren't always the most exciting thing to talk about, but they matter because they affect us all. We all have access to our utility services. We all need them, right? So I'm just glad that we're able to talk about it and get folks involved in the conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.